I had been wondering for some time whether, now that China has gained the international element of respectability that it once craved for, it's now getting somewhat fed up with migrant workers flocking into its utopian workers' paradise. Let me explain. I'd been chasing up jobs in the People's Republic for some 6 months and had visited Beijing on tourist visas so as to afford a better chance of someone being interested in offering me work. For, so I reasoned, if I were recruiting for staff, would I seriously consider someone applying from halfway across the world? My first attempt at finding work in Beijing was badly timed. Although I knew that Chinese New Year was in February, I hadn't realized that many take their vacations well before the start of the holiday, and so the people I had hoped to cold call weren't even there. Having said that, on applying for a China visitor's visa in Dubai, the process could not have been simpler. I took my passport, a photo, and the required cash to a travel agency, who even filled out the forms for me, and 3 days later I was the proud possessor of an L visa in my passport. Let me add an aside here. I also applied for a number of posts online. Some of the adverts didn't specify the name of the company, but just described what the work involved. I applied to a company in Shanghai, and a week or 3 later got a charming email saying they were interested in my CV and could I take a look at their website and tell them what my impressions were of it. So I dutifully typed in www.lello.com and found to my surprise a site which told me that Lello is a Swedish designer brand that prides itself in offering only the most stylish and luxurious intimate lifestyle accessories. Or to put it another way, vibrators and sex toys at the top end of the market. I've often thought since then that getting this job would have made my Christmas present list a piece of cake. But alas, it was not to be. The next time I visited Beijing, I had to apply for a visa in the UK, as I had by now lost my residency status in the UAE. Apart from the fact that it cost nearly 50% more applying in the UK than it had in the UAE, the process was again relatively pain-free. This time I had to trot over to Manchester, not my favourite city by a long chalk. So I trotted over to Chinatown and looked for an agency called City Travel. When I finally found it, some 10 minutes' walk from Piccadilly Station, they couldn't have been more helpful. Once again, 3 days later, I had another Chinese visa in my passport. This time, my visit coincided with a tomb sweeping holiday, although in reality this only affected 2 of the days I was there, so I was able to cold call and eventually get seen by those I was seeking. An HR man from what eventually turned out to be my future employer agreed to send me some written tests, and I left China once again full of hope. I let him know that once the tests were out the way, I would be delighted to pop over to Beijing for another interview if he so desired. This was a good move, I reckoned, to show commitment and determination in landing a job. And so it was that I undertook a third journey to the northern capital a few weeks later. I get in touch with the HR guy who tells me that I have passed my written tests and that I will be interviewed by one of the department heads this time around. I turn up at the appointed hour to find that A, the department head is a woman, and B, there's another female with her. No problem, except both are wearing miniskirts and have legs that travel all the way up to their armpits. And we're sitting in seats making up the corners of an equilateral triangle without even the benefit of a coffee table between us. Now, as all guys will know, it's not at all easy trying to shift one's eyes away from an attractive woman crossing her legs when those legs travel all the way up to regions unknown. Multiply that by 2, and this has to be one of the toughest of interview conditions for any red-blooded male. You force yourself to look away from female A crossing her legs, and you become very aware of trying not to look at the legs of female B, as you would hate her to think you were obsessed with beautiful legs. So instead, the male eye comes to rest on the low-cut blouse of female B, from which you force yourself to look away, as you don't want her to sum you up as a tit man either. So you force yourself to look away from the 2 of them as if seeking inspiration in the rafters, or out the window, only to realise that this makes you look as if you aren't interested in the job being talked about. So you turn back to female B, who has now started to uncross her legs, so you turn back to female A, and this continues on as you hopelessly try to concentrate on the searching questions being thrown at you. Luckily, being a guy who is as pure and innocent as the driven snow, I'm able to pass this toughest of interviews, and before I know it, I'm being asked how soon I could actually start work. The answer is obvious. How soon can I get my Chinese visa? First things first then. I set off to Manchester once again to submit my passport at the City Travel Agency. My new employer had emailed me 2 documents, an invitation letter of duly authorised unit and a working permit duly stamped and authorised by the State Administration of Foreign Experts Affairs. These I take with my passport and photograph and filled out visa forms to City Travel, pay the fee, and am promised I will have my new visa in 4 days' time. Alas, I've just got back to my home in Yorkshire, a 3-hour journey from Manchester, when I get a phone call telling me that as the invitation letter and the working permit have been handwritten instead of being typed or computer-generated, they are inadmissible. I will have to get new forms sent over from China. Their reasoning is that anyone could have handwritten the forms, whereas if they had been filled out by a computer, then they would be more trustworthy. A dubious argument, in my opinion, since they had been given the official stamps required before they started their journey. I emailed to Beijing. I talk on the phone to Beijing. Beijing told me they would take at least 24 hours to redo the forms and get them authorised, and that then they will send them over to the UK. Don't worry, I'm told, you should get them by Friday. Friday comes and goes. Saturday comes and goes. Sunday comes and goes. I emailed to Beijing and asked them for the courier tracking number which they duly sent back by return. They've used FedEx for the job, who, I am to find out, has first sent the package to Incheon in Korea, from where it is then sent to their depot in Guangzhou, back in China once more. From here it has been sent to Almaty in Kazakhstan, and thence on to Paris. The next day it clears the English Channel, arriving in Stansted, from where it is sent to Rochdale, and then driven over the Pennines, where I receive it 5 days after it had first been picked up in Beijing. Without further ado, I rush the package back over the Pennines once again to Manchester and present it to my new Chinese friend in City Travel. You will now get your visa on Thursday, I'm told, only to receive another phone call 3 hours later, as I step off the train in Yorkshire, to be told that the smiling picture of your favourite podcaster gracing the first page of his visa application is unacceptable. It appears that it has been printed on matte paper and not on photoglossy paper, and so has been rejected. Their thinking, I am told, is that I could have lifted the photograph of anyone off the internet and printed it out using my computer. The fact that the pic matches the timeless efficacy of my passport photo, and that I could just as easily have printed out an internet picture on glossy paper as I did on matte, sways no argument. Another trip to Manchester is now necessary, as my Groundhog Day starts off once again. My smiling Chinese friend in City Travel spies me from afar and greets me as if he has genuinely missed me in the intervening 24 hours, which no doubt he has. I decline his offer of allowing me to pay another £35 for a fast-track service, telling him that as I intend to fly on the Sunday, I would be just as happy to pick up the passport on the Friday as I would have had I picked it up on the Thursday. Now, in the intervening moments during which I have not been travelling either to or from Manchester, I have looked up on the Qatar Airways website how to go about using my accumulated Privilege Club air miles to fly one way from Manchester to Beijing. There were plenty of places on the first leg of the journey from Manchester to Doha, but alas, no places recorded from Doha to Beijing. But the website dedicated to us privileged members of Qatar Airways fan club tells me that gold members can still get a guaranteed place by going to any Qatar Airways office. As they have an office, not a dragon's shake from City Travel, I duly set off on the marathon 5-minute journey up the road. Friends of mine will know that as a committed Qatar Airways traveller, I am somewhat unimpressed by the UK operations of this airline. Not only are the British hostesses that they employ on their UK routes simply not a patch on their Asian counterparts on other routes, but their ground staff in Manchester and Heathrow airports are simply dreadful. Well, now I can tell you that their UK booking staff are just as bad, nay, much worse. No, they can't book me a privilege ticket. Oh, their website says they can? Oh, let me find out, sir. OK, we can book you a ticket, but you will have to fill out a form which we'll fax off to Doha, and maybe they will get back to you before the weekend. But I want to fly at the weekend. Well, we can't guarantee you a seat, but we can take your money now and see if Doha responds. What crap service. I walk out of their office letting them know in uncertain terms what I think of them. Back home, I ring up Qatar Airways in Doha myself, using Skype, of course, to reduce the cost. We can put in a request for you, sir, I'm told, but cannot guarantee you a seat for another 2 days. But your website says that Gold members are guaranteed a seat whatever happens. Oh, does it, sir? We don't know about that here. Would you like to pay for the ticket and see if you're lucky? If I'm lucky? Is this a serious airline or a national lottery, for God's sake? In the end, I ring off and book myself a normal paid seat on the airline so that I can at least guarantee to end up in Beijing on the day I'm scheduled to. It so happens that Qatar Airways has one of the cheapest fares on this route, a full £400 cheaper than the likes of KLM. Friday arrives. The phone goes at 12:57, a full 2 hours earlier than I had been told to pick up the passport. Your passport is now ready, I'm told. I assure them that I'm on my way to pick it up. I once more travel over to Manchester to reach City Travel. Once more, I'm greeted like a really long-lost friend by the ever-smiling Chinese in the agency. And finally, get hold of my visa, my Z visa, which will now allow me to enter China, where I once again surrender my passport in order to apply for a residency permit. Finally, another chapter in my unwritten autobiography comes to a close. Ni hao, Zhongguo. Greetings, China. Finally, I'm on my way.